Hey everyone, I'm your host, Emily Lauren. Welcome to the Body Positive Podcast, where we ditch diets, normalize real bodies, and help you feel better in your own skin.
Welcome everyone to the Body Positive Podcast Show. We have Katie Olthoff on the show to talk about her experience with intuitive eating, farming, and how orthorexia impacts meat consumption. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, I think that this is such an important topic, Emily, and I love that more people are talking about body positivity, intuitive eating, and then I'm always looking for opportunities to share more information about farming as well.
I love that. So your family's in farming. Tell me a little bit about what that's like.
Sure. So I actually married into a farming family. I did not grow up on a farm. And so a lot of the things that I've experienced over the past few years, I've realized that there are a lot of people out there, especially women, who don't have any experience with the types of things that happen every day on farms, and especially modern livestock farms. So my husband's family has been farming here in central Iowa for several generations. In the 1950s, they started raising turkeys and really started specializing in turkeys. And over the years, the turkey farm has changed, the technology has changed, the housing systems have changed. And right now, we raise about 100,000 turkeys a year on our farm. My husband is a third generation turkey farmer. We have large barns that we keep our turkeys in, and then we have one employee on the farm, one hired man on the farm that helps us out with that.
Awesome. So go ahead. Sorry.
Like I said, a lot of other people don't get to have that experience, right? It's very different from how a lot of people live. And so over the years, I've really developed a passion for sharing what happens on farms with people who don't have that firsthand experience. And I've actually had the pleasure of writing a series of children's books about modern agriculture. And now I'm the co-founder of a company called Chop Local. That's chop like pork chop. And we help farmers sell their meat online. And we also help with their marketing by, again, telling the story of what's going on their farm.
That's amazing. So tell me a little bit more about the books that you've written on agriculture and how you have used these to help children understand where food comes from and why that's so important.
Yeah, so I started this because my own son, when he was in preschool, wanted to know why we didn't have a farm. I call it Old McDonald's farm. Why we didn't have a farm that had, one cow that we could milk and a couple of pigs and some chickens. And he really thought that's what farms were supposed to look like, even though here he is immersed in what I call modern livestock agriculture. And I really realized, especially as a turkey farmer, preschool and kindergarten classrooms across the country do a Thanksgiving unit, and it's showing, turkeys in the wild and turkeys outside, and that is not what we eat for Thanksgiving in the United States. And so it really started from wanting to develop some resources for those teachers. I'm a former teacher also.
Oh, awesome.
So I wanted to develop some resources for those teachers around Thanksgiving and what the modern turkey farm looks like. Then from there, I worked with a nonprofit organization called the Iowa Ag Literacy Foundation. And they have lesson plans and resources and farm tours and things like that for teachers to use. And everything ties into the standards and benchmarks that teachers are having to teach anyway. And so we developed a series of, I think there are 9 books covering everything from the turkey farm and cattle farms to apple orchards, egg farms. We have a dairy book. We actually have a book on wind energy because a lot of farmers in Iowa have wind turbines on their farms. So it's been really neat. It's given me the opportunity to go and visit a lot of farms again, since I didn't grow up in agriculture. I was able to go and visit and learn about all of these types of farms as I was writing these books.
Oh, that is amazing. And it's important, I guess, for children to understand, how animals are cared for in these situations and that their food is safe to eat. Is that correct?
You nailed it. That is exactly what we're trying to share with them. And then also, I mean, there's a lot of other things too. There's some really neat plant science that goes into it, animal science, career opportunities. But that's the bottom line is we want people to have more of that firsthand experience of what happens on farms and starting with the kids, but as well as their parents or their teachers too. We want them to have that information.
Awesome. So aside from people who avoid cutting meat out for personal or medical reasons, there are quite a few fad diets out there that are calling for cutting meat out entirely. Why have meatless diets become so popular?
Well, I mean, I think that there are a variety of reasons, and a lot of it can relate to people's core values that they feel are really important. But what we find frustrating in agriculture is that a lot of it is built off of misinformation. So things about, sustainability and agriculture's impact on the environment, a lot of those things are really not based in fact, or the facts have been cherry picked to, promote a certain diet or promote a certain agenda. One of the other things that we see quite often is discussions about beef's impact on the environment. And a lot of those studies are looking at beef production worldwide. And if you think about what cattle look like in, Asia or India or Africa, it's not, they don't have the technology, the research, the animal breeding, the genetics that goes into our American system of raising beef. And so those numbers, I guess raising beef in other parts of the country is not as efficient as it, or other part, sorry, let me start that again. Raising beef in other parts of the world is not as efficient as it is here in the United States. And so when you look at worldwide numbers, it's a lot different from what the impacts are of raising animals in the United States. The other thing you kind of touched on, animal welfare. Again, there are some people that believe very firmly that animals are mistreated on farms and that they should avoid eating meat for that reason. My experience has been so far from that. That's one of the things that is hard for me to understand when someone chooses not to eat meat for that reason. Because all of the farms that I have been on, all of the farmers that I know dedicate their lives to taking care of these animals. And we're talking, they're spending their Saturdays and Sundays. They're not going on vacations because they won't trust someone else to care for their animals. They're so dedicated. And so that's disheartening for us to see that people have chosen not to eat the products that we raise because they believe that they can't trust us.
Yes.
And again, like I said, that's so far from what my experience has been.
I think that's really important to note. What are some of the misconceptions about meat that can lead people to believe it's not healthy or good for our bodies? Because it's not just about the reasons we were talking about before. There's a lot of people that think, oh, meat's not healthy for us.
Right. So I think one of the big ones has been, kind of the demonization of fat over the last several decades. And we know now, it's funny because, nutrition science changes. You wouldn't think that it would, but as we learn more, we find out how important fat is to our diets. And I think I'm by no means a proponent of the keto diet or anything like that, but I think that there are some people that are realizing that, maybe fat's not the enemy. They do try to shift the blame to sugar. I don't believe that sugar is the enemy either. Obviously, I follow intuitive eating, so I eat everything without guilt. And that's kind of the goal with meat too. I want people to be able to eat meat without guilt, whether that's, whether their guilt is fueled by health concerns or concerns about agriculture in general.
Exactly. And I know that one of the warning signs for orthorexia is eliminating entire food groups. So for those who aren't aware, orthorexia is an informal diagnosis for people who become obsessive about eating healthy to the point where it can actually cause or lead to nutritional deficiencies and illness. How is orthorexia connected to these reduced meat diets as well.
Well, I will not claim to be an expert on orthorexia, but what I have seen in some of the intuitive eating support groups that I'm a part of is that it seems as though veganism, vegetarianism can be used sort of as a cover up for other disordered eating. And there can be people that become obsessive about it. And I think sometimes they do use, well, they're saying that it's because of animal welfare, or they're saying it's because of the impact on the environment or the perceived impact on the environment that they're not eating meat. But really, it's another way for them to control their eating and eliminate a food group. And deep down, again, I don't want to speak for people who suffer from orthorexia, but I do see some displacement of the true reasons of why they are not eating meat. And I think really a lot of times it does come down to a control issue.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that that's the case for any type of eating disorder too. We come up with these excuses to cover up our disordered eating habits, and that's a really good point. I never really thought about it from that perspective, because so often we think it's a choice or a health cause, but sometimes it's simply a matter of being clever at disguising your disordered eating. So I think that's really important to note. And of course, we're not here to make anyone feel badly about not eating meat, especially if it's a personal choice. But why is eating meat good for a balanced diet?
Oh, it has, I mean, obviously the protein is so important, right? We know that the fat is important also, especially for kids as they are growing in their brain development. There are so many important vitamins and minerals that are present in meat. Beef has zinc, iron, protein. It's very helpful in developing immunity. Turkey is very high in protein as well, which is really important. It's so funny to me because my kids are really picky eaters, and I try to follow intuitive eating with them also, but they have trouble eating meat because of the texture a lot of times. And so I feel like I'm constantly worrying about them getting enough meat versus kind of the opposite situation. But it just, I mean, as a follower of intuitive eating and really the idea of gentle nutrition, I think it's important that we have that variety in our diets. And I want people to know that if they are concerned, if they have concerns about how their food choices affect the environment or affect animal welfare or things like that, they can always come to a farmer and ask. And like you said, I don't want to make anybody feel bad either. And so that's the message that I try to spread when I see these conversations come up is I just like to say, I am a farmer. I've visited a lot of farms across in the last few years. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or help you get connected with some real life on the ground farmers that can show you their farms and how they care for things and the changes that they're making in technology in order to become more efficient, all of those types of things.
I love that. There's nothing to hide there, right?
Exactly.
So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is portion size. So often we are taught that we should only eat this much or have this much of something. And I practice intuitive eating as well. So I have as much as I want until I feel like I've had enough. But is there a recommendation for how much meat you should be having? I've heard all kinds of different, diet culture reasoning, only have this meat the size of your palm, things like that. What's your take on that?
I'm with you as much as you want, obviously. I believe that an official serving size is 3 ounces. And so that is about the size of your palm or about the size of a deck of cards, is what an official serving for an adult is. We eat a variety of meat at our house. It never seems to be an issue. We eat a lot of beef. We eat a lot of ground beef because it's very easy. We eat a lot of turkey. obviously, because that's
Yes.
what we raise. We also eat quite a bit of pork as well, and so we try to keep a variety in there. And also for the kids, I don't shy away from giving them those meats that are a little bit more consistent in flavor and texture. And so what I mean is if I buy the same package of hot dogs, every single hot dog is the same, right? If
Yes.
I grill a steak or a pork chop or even a hamburger, they're not always the same for the kids.
Correct.
And my kids really like things that are very consistent where they know exactly what to expect. And so I don't, like I said, I don't shy away from the chicken nuggets, the chicken strips, the hot
Yeah.
dogs, the little smokies, those types of things either.
Good. So you've been practicing intuitive eating for a couple years now, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about what you practice in terms of intuitive eating and what let you down this path?
Sure. So I grew up in a small body, and I was a dancer, and a cheerleader. And after I have three kids now, as it happens, your body starts to change. I also have hypothyroidism. I dieted after I had my first son, and it worked. I lost 10 pounds, something like that, and it worked. And so he'll be 13 here in a couple of weeks. And so over
Wow.
the past 10 years, I kept trying to do that again. Kept trying to do
Yeah.
the same thing that worked the first time, and it never worked again. And so a couple years ago, around New Year's, which is a lot of times when people decide they're going to buckle down again,
Yep.
around New Year's, I told myself, that's it. I'm going to do this one more time. I'm going to do it right. And then I'm going to keep the weight off, and I'm never going to diet again. And I started looking into some different diets. And somebody, thank goodness, in a Facebook group said, have you heard of intuitive eating? If you never want to diet again, maybe you should look into intuitive eating. And I thought, oh, great, this is the diet that's going to save me, right? But I started looking into it and I realized, oh, she's right. If I never want to diet again, this is the way that I need to do this. And so it was huge for me. It took a while to really accept. I think when people start intuitive eating, they still kind of hope that if they do it right, they will lose some weight, you
Yep.
know? And so it took a little while to accept that that wasn't going to happen. I did quit weighing myself immediately, which was huge. I did.
Yes.
I also really took advantage of going. We have some consignment shops in the town close by, and so I bought new clothes as I needed to, and I consigned my old clothes as I needed to. It's interesting because it's all been part of this journey for me. I did the Marie Kondo, like, if it doesn't spark joy, get rid of it thing, which
Yes.
that really helped me be willing to get rid of the clothes that no longer fit me,
Yeah.
because clearly they don't spark joy when I, can't wear them.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't know. I felt like I was spending so much time and energy either dieting or feeling guilty that I wasn't dieting, that it just led me to this breaking point. And I did, I read a couple of books on intuitive eating, which was really helpful. I read the Effort Diet also. I don't know if we can say the real word on here.
Yeah,
So,
go for
the
it.
Carolyn Spooner book. Um, and my biggest focus, I guess, at the beginning was the body positivity. I am not still, after 2.5 years, I am not very good at mindful eating. Just mindfulness in general comes hard to me. I was actually diagnosed with ADHD last year too,
Wow.
and so that's a little bit of a challenge for me. But just letting go of the guilt and using those books as a resource to understand. You were talking about excuses earlier. A lot of people say that they're dieting for their health, and they use that as an excuse. And I've seen that a lot. And so understanding how stressful it is on your body to diet and how terrible that is for your health was really a good turning point for me too. So now I eat whatever whenever. I try to provide balanced meals for my kids. I don't love to cook. I love easy meals, and so I'm always looking for the easiest way
I
to
hear you,
get.
Mama.
Yeah, yeah. So the easiest way to get dinner on the table or lunch, as it has been the last year as well. And then also, I have a daughter now, a 4-year-old, and so fostering body positivity and intuitive eating in my children is very important to me too. And I do see outside influences that already start to um, make the kids think that, bodies should look one way. And so I'm constantly trying to reiterate to them that all bodies are good bodies and that
Yes.
we don't need to try to manipulate our bodies through food. We talk a lot when I talk about getting them to eat protein, I talk a little bit more about their energy level and their brain development. And, your body needs food energy, is what I tell them a lot that's
I
been a
love that.
focus for us as well.
I love that function over appearance, right? And I think that
Yes.
that's a really good aspect that so often we talk about the non-physical when it comes to body positivity, but it's also important to talk about what our body's actually doing, what its function is, and how we can keep it functioning at its best form without
Mm-hmm.
focusing on the physical. And like you said too, with intuitive eating, it really is a process. It's not a perfect process. And I think that's the same with body positivity, and they can really go hand in hand, because we need them both, and we can't expect it to be a miracle solution. Just like diet culture is
Right.
never going to give us a solution that 100% works all the time, because our bodies ebb and flow, and we ebb and flow with them. So I think embracing that is very, very important. I just wanted to say that it was so informative learning about how our food is produced, and specifically meat is produced, because there's so much stigma attached to that. And like you said, with how fat from food is viewed, it's similar to how fat people are viewed in our society. So thank you so much for
Yes.
sharing your expertise. Tell us where we can learn about you, your books, where we can find you online.
Yeah, so I am most active on Instagram, and my handle there is Katie Olthoff, Olthoff. I do have a website that's katiealthoff.com. I used to blog fairly frequently. I don't anymore, but there are some archived things there. There's a link to my books there as well. And then you can always check out Chop Local. It's CHOPLOCAL. We have a lot of farmer stories on there, and then you can also purchase meat directly from the farmer. And so, if people are worried about, some of those concerns that we discussed, but they feel more comfortable when they can actually see the farm or the farmer that they're purchasing from, that's a great opportunity there as well.
Absolutely. And lastly, if you could offer one tip to our listeners, what would that be?
Oh, I think there's a couple of them here,
Go for it.
if I may. Yes. So, on the intuitive eating piece, if you're just getting into this, like, you just need to realize that it takes time, and you really do need to go through the refeeding process. It will feel like you are binging, but it will end eventually. I wanted to eat Gardettos and Oreos constantly when I first started intuitive eating. And now I can buy Oreos every single week and keep them in the house. And yeah, I have some every once in a while, but I'm not, it doesn't feel
Obsessed.
like it's out of control. And I'm not craving them anymore. So go ahead, let yourself go through that process. It's really important to go through that whole process in order to come out on the other side. The other tip
Absolutely.
that I mentioned earlier is if you have questions about meat production or where meat's coming from, animal welfare, that type of thing, please get in contact with a farmer. There are so many resources online right now. And I guess, be on the lookout. If somebody's telling you that meat is unsafe or that it's only safe if it comes in this way or from this type of farm, there's probably a little bit of an ulterior motive there. And so just be on the lookout for that.
Great advice. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. It was so nice to meet you, and I wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you, Emily.
Once again, thanks for listening to today's episode. Make sure you follow us at Real Happy Daughter, and please share this with someone who needs a little more real in their life.